everyone. Welcome to the Writing Your Personal Narrative workshop recording. Please make sure that you've downloaded and/or printed the worksheets that go with this training. The download link for those should be in the same place where you found this recording. My name is Trish Moreno, and I'm one of the consultants on the North Dakota DOT DBE Supportive Services team here at Project Solutions, Inc. In response to the Interim Final Rule, or the IFR, the North Dakota Department of Transportation reached out to us as their supportive services team to develop this workshop to assist you all as small business owners with writing your personal narratives that are now required as part of the certification process. This training will provide technical assistance focused solely on helping you craft and strengthen your personal narrative. Our goal is to support you in developing a well-structured and authentic narrative. Please note, though, that this session does not determine, influence, or assess eligibility related to your personal narrative. It is strictly about writing guidance and best practices. So while we can't guarantee that your personal narrative will meet the qualification standards for DBE certification or reevaluation, the goal is to help you tell your story effectively and write narratives that are clear, concise, and effectively demonstrate your experiences and economic disadvantage under the new IFR requirements. I am going to turn my camera off at this point as we go through the rest of the presentation so that it doesn't cover up any of the content on the slides. So before we talk about writing your personal narratives, let's look at a summary of the key changes that the IFR brought about when it went into effect on October 3rd, 2025. This is not a detailed summary of the IFR, it's just a high-level overview of some key points that could affect your certification and the DBE program and process. You can visit the link that's embedded in this QR code on the slide to read the complete IFR. Our focus today is not to question the legality or the politics surrounding these changes. We're here to help you understand the requirements and confidently write your personal narrative, focusing on how to make it compliant. So as we work through this process, remember that Project Solutions is available to assist you in one-on-one sessions with guidance on your personal narrative. And we'll give you that information on how to contact us at the end of the presentation. So the U.S. DOT's IFR has significantly impacted how DBEs are certified and how they participate in federally funded transportation projects. So let's take a closer look at some of those key changes. First off is the elimination of presumptions. Previously, certain groups were presumed to be socially and economically disadvantaged based on race or gender. The IFR removes these presumptions, requiring all applicants to individually prove their disadvantage. In the updated FAQ from USDOT that was released at the beginning of December, it is clear that gender and race are no longer the criteria for eligibility, and they shouldn't be used as the focus of the social disadvantage in your personal narrative. Individualized certification is required. Applicants must now submit a detailed personal narrative explaining the specific social and economic barriers they've faced. Financial documentation, including a personal net worth statement, is also required to support those claims. Mandatory recertification for existing DBEs. All currently certified DBEs have to undergo this reevaluation under the new standards. Until this process is complete, DBE participation in programs is suspended. There's also been a suspension of DBE goals. Agencies are temporarily prohibited from setting DBE goals or counting DBE participation in contracts until this reevaluation process is finalized. There's been a terminology shift throughout the program. The rules also update terminology, moving from race neutral and race conscious to DBE neutral and DBE conscious to reflect this new approach. There's also been a change in data collection. Race, ethnicity, and gender data will no longer be collected in DBE applications. just to align with the rule's focus on individualized disadvantage rather than group identity. And the legal context of these changes are a direct response to recent legal challenges, including the MAMCO lawsuit and Supreme Court decisions that have reshaped how affirmative action and race-conscious policies and programs are evaluated. Under the new IFR, the certification process for DBE applicants has fundamentally changed. In the past, certain groups were automatically presumed to be socially and economically disadvantaged. But under the IFR, that automatic presumption based on race or gender has been removed. Now, every applicant must demonstrate disadvantage based on their own individual experiences and circumstances. That means each person must provide individualized evidence, not assumptions, not statistics, but their personal story, and support it with documented facts. A key part of that individualized proof is the personal narrative. This is where you'll describe your own real experiences, specific moments where you faced barriers, bias, or unequal access that affected your education, employment, or business opportunities. So again, today our focus is not on debating the legality or politics behind the change. Our goal is to make sure you feel confident telling and substantiating your story in a clear, factual, and structured way that aligns with these new requirements. So let's take a look at what the personal narrative should include and the best practices to make it effective. Under the new rule, the personal narrative is your opportunity to show individualized proof of disadvantage, not just to say it happened. Certifiers are looking for specific examples that clearly demonstrate how bias, discrimination, or systemic barriers affected your ability to succeed. Each incident should show how your progress was impeded in education, employment, or business, and ideally how that led to economic harm. So for example, you might describe being denied a promotion despite qualifications, losing access to financing, or being excluded from opportunities that others received. Most applicants are encouraged to describe 2 incidents unless one was so pervasive or recurring that it had long-term effects by itself. And remember, these incidents must have taken place within the United States and reflect your own lived experience. The purpose of this requirement is to ensure DBE certification decisions are based on real, documented disadvantage, not assumptions or generalizations. So let's think about this together for a minute. Why do you think certifiers might need specific incidents rather than just general statements to prove economic or social disadvantage? While you're thinking about that, I'll give you a couple of reasons that we came up with. Because certifiers need proof, not just opinions, and specifics make your story real and verifiable. It helps them see the actual impact, not just the feeling. And the new rule is about individualized evidence, not assumptions. Specifics make it easier for certifiers to apply the same standard to everyone. Your specific examples make your story credible. It makes it measurable and compliant with the IFR. So next, we'll walk through how to identify and write about those incidents step by step. Okay, so now we have established why we're here to talk about personal narratives. Before we begin our exercises, though, I want to acknowledge something important. Reflecting on experiences of bias or discrimination can be very personal, sometimes emotional and even difficult. I want you to know that there's no judgment here. We're simply working to identify factual experiences that have affected your professional, educational, or business opportunities. The purpose is to help you tell your story clearly and effectively through your personal narrative. Through this workshop, we will guide you to select 2 specific incidents that best illustrate social disadvantage that you have experienced. One incident may be enough if it was pervasive, meaning widespread or deeply rooted. It happened repeatedly, affected multiple areas of your life, or it created a long-term barrier, not just a one-time event. In most cases, though, providing 2 examples helps the certifiers understand the scope of your experiences without creating any unnecessary delays in the review process. Our objective is to help this process result in a recertification on your first attempt. So first, we're going to focus on the 3 main areas from the IFR where disadvantage may have occurred. First is education. This includes denial of access to schools or programs, exclusions from honors or associations, or social pressures that discouraged your professional or business education. Employment is the next one. This includes unequal treatment in hiring, promotions, pay, benefits, terms of employment, or being steered into non-professional roles. And then finally, business history. This includes unequal access to financing or contracts, unfavorable lending terms, unequal treatment by customers or business associates, or exclusion from professional networks. Think broadly about your life experiences in these areas. The incident doesn't have to be recent. It can be from any period in your life, as long as it occurred in the United States and had an impact on your educational, professional, or business progress. Because automatic presumptions based on race or gender have been removed, many applicants worry that their experiences might not count. But the IFR makes something very clear. Discrimination and bias come in many forms, not only race or gender. There are several other types of disadvantage that may be relevant, and these experiences can absolutely support your personal narrative when they are specific, documented, and clearly linked to economic harm. So let's take a look at some examples. First is socioeconomic bias. For example, being tracked away from advanced or business-related classes because of your family income or the neighborhood you grew up in. That's a form of disadvantage tied to education and opportunity. Accent or language bias is another one, not related to national origin, but related to the way you speak. Maybe being told you weren't professional enough, or being excluded from client-facing roles, which directly impacts employment progression and earnings potential. Age-based bias is another one. Being denied promotions because you were considered too young, or not taken seriously as a business owner with lenders or contractors. Conversely, older applicants may have been passed over for training or advancement because employers preferred younger candidates. Some individuals experience barriers due to disability, whether physical or learning related. For example, inadequate accommodations in school that limited academic advancement or workplace structures that hindered promotions. Situations involving veteran status where individuals returning from service face unequal treatment in employment or have difficulty reestablishing business opportunities. Another common form involves caregiver or family responsibilities, particularly if employers made assumptions that you were less committed or less available, leading to missed promotions or reduced opportunities. And then finally, there are institutional barriers. These are not personal prejudice, but systemic factors like policies, bureaucratic hurdles, or organizational norms that repeatedly disadvantaged you. What matters most for your personal narrative is not the category. It is the specific incident, the specific impact, and the direct connection to economic harm. So as we move forward in the training, think broadly. Think about experiences where something outside of your control held you back in school, at work, or in your business journey, and how that setback translated into a financial or business obstacle. Now, we're going to use worksheet number 1 to identify 2 incidents. So while you're getting that ready, I'm going to explain this step of the process. This is where you will begin brainstorming for your personal narrative. For each incident, you will answer what happened, who was involved, when and where did it occur, why do you believe it was biased or discriminatory, how did it impact your educational, professional, or business progress. At this stage, you don't need to write full paragraphs, just short notes or bullet points that capture the key facts. Later, we'll turn those notes into narrative paragraphs. Remember, we're looking for chronic or substantial disadvantage, not just minor frustrations. Focus on incidents where the disadvantage caused measurable impact. For example, lost opportunities, delayed advancement, or restricted access to education, employment, or business resources. Think back over your educational, employment, and business experiences. Think of a time that you faced an obstacle that others in your position did not. What lasting effect did it have on your business or career path? Try to identify 2 incidents that are specific, factual, and significant. As you work, ask yourself the questions on the screen. What exactly happened? Who was involved? When and where did it occur? Why do I believe bias was a factor? How did this impact my progress or economic opportunity? And if it's helpful, just start jotting down any events or situations that come to mind, and then select the 2 that are the clearest and most impactful. Remember, again, we're going for bullet points here, not full paragraphs. So go ahead and pause the video at this point and work on worksheet number 1, and then unpause when you're ready to continue. Now that you've identified your 2 incidents of bias or disadvantage, it's time to turn those notes into full narrative paragraphs. This is where your personal narrative starts to take shape and come together to become the document that certifiers are going to use to evaluate your social and economic disadvantage. To do this, we're going to use the who, what, when, where, why, and how framework to ensure each incident is complete, factual, and clearly demonstrates how the barrier affected your education, employment, or business success. Remember, your goal is clarity, specificity, and impact, not necessarily length. 1 or 2 well-documented incidents are going to be enough. So let's review the 6 W questions you're going to answer for each incident. Who? Identify the person, group, or institution responsible. An example, the commercial loan officer. What? Describe the conduct or barrier. An example, denied my loan application despite meeting all criteria as explained by the bank. And for this, we actually went and used the loan criteria for Wells Fargo just because it's a national branch. So we included that in our personal narrative. So to qualify for a business loan at Wells Fargo, you need a personal credit score of at least 640, a minimum of 2 years in business, a debt service coverage ratio or a DSCR of 1.5 or higher, meaning that you make $1.50 for every dollar of outstanding business debt that you currently have. And then they also sometimes require a $150 opening fee, which could be waived with certain Wells Fargo business checking accounts. And then when? Establish the time period. So an example, in 2019 while applying for a business loan. And then where? Show the context. At a Wells Fargo Bank national branch in Bismarck. Why? Explain why you believe it was bias or discrimination. And an example, the officer made comments or asked questions unrelated to financial qualifications. Something like about your personal background or your age. And the decision contradicted the bank's stated criteria and typical practices. Other similarly situated businesses with comparable financials received approval. And then how? Show the impact on your education, employment, or business. So example, this prevented equipment purchases and delayed contracts by 18 months, reducing revenue by $90,000. So notice how each question kind of builds on the ones before it to create a complete story with evidence and context. Now you can rearrange those answers to form your complete story and paragraph. So putting this all together into our example is going to look like this. In 2019, at a Wells Fargo bank branch in Bismarck, North Dakota, the commercial loan officer denied my business loan application despite meeting all stated criteria. I had a personal credit score above 640, 2 years in business, and a debt service coverage ratio exceeding 1.5, which the bank lists as standard requirements. I believe this decision reflected bias because other similarly situated businesses with comparable financials received approval. This denial prevented me from purchasing essential equipment and delayed contracts for 18 months, reducing my revenue by approximately $90,000. Obviously, this is a fictitious example that we just made up, but it does show you how these all come together to answer those questions to provide a narrative. So now it's your turn. We're going to take a couple minutes here, so again, you can pause the video while you work on this, and you're going to take incident number 1 from your notes on worksheet 1 and answer the 6W questions on worksheet 2. Then turn your answers into a short paragraph like the example I just went through as a guide. And remember, as you're doing this, your goal is clarity, specificity, and impact, not length. Keep your sentences concise and factual. Focus on impact. Certifiers need to see the economic or professional consequence. And remember, since race and gender presumptions have been removed, you want your personal narrative to not focus too much on those presumptions, or it could be found ineligible. Use numbers, dates, or other measurable details if possible. Go ahead and pause the recording now and go ahead and work on worksheet number 2. So now that you've drafted your 2 narrative paragraphs using the who, what, when, where, and why, and how framework, it's time to connect your experiences to measurable economic harm. This is one of the most important parts of your personal narrative. Under the IFR, you must show that the barriers or incidents you described had a real negative effect on your ability to advance in education, employment, or business. It's not enough to show that the bias occurred. You have to show how it impacted your income, your opportunities, or access to capital. But remember, economic harm doesn't always mean a specific dollar amount, though that helps if you can specifically estimate one. Economic harm can include things like lost income or business revenue, missed contract opportunities, denial of financing or credit, unfavorable loan terms, increased business costs due to exclusion, delayed career advancement or growth, lower pay, benefits, or promotion opportunities, and difficulty building assets or wealth compared to peers. Your goal is to show cause and effect. The barrier caused a measurable or describable financial setback, or it slowed your progress compared to similarly situated individuals who didn't face that bias. So let's look at a couple of examples here to make this really concrete. So example number 1, business financing. In 2020, I was denied a $75,000 small business loan despite meeting the lender's standard qualifications. Another business with similar revenue and credit profile received approval. Because of the denial, I couldn't purchase equipment I needed to expand into a new service line, and as a result, I lost an estimated $120,000 in potential contracts that year. Example number 2 looks at employment. During my early career, I was consistently passed over for promotions despite positive performance reviews and meeting all required qualifications. Employees with similar tenure and qualifications advanced ahead of me. This delayed my advancement into management by about 5 years, costing me higher wages and retirement contributions during that period. Notice how each example connects the incident to a clear, measurable outcome. It's important that you make that link, the barrier, the harm, and the impact. Be as quantitative as possible and as specific as possible. Now, Take out worksheet number 3, quantifying the impact. This is where we translate your experiences into tangible evidence of harm. You're going to see 4 sections on the worksheet: the type of harm, the description, the magnitude, and evidence. Think about what kind of harm resulted from your incidents. Maybe lost revenue, a delayed project, or a denied opportunity. Then describe how that happened and estimate how large the impact was. In that last section, you're going to jot down any evidence that could support this story. Things like letters, emails, loan denials, or bid records. Don't worry if you don't have those documents that you need today. The goal here is simply to note what you could provide or to describe it clearly in your narrative. So again, let's take a couple minutes here. Go ahead and pause the video to fill out this worksheet for each of your 2 incidents. So once you've described your economic harm, you're going to link it to your personal net worth statement. This is part of your supporting documentation for DBE certification. Your PNW shows your current financial position, but your narrative explains why your financial position reflects disadvantage. Together, they should demonstrate that you are economically disadvantaged, in fact, relative to similarly situated individuals. For example, if you were denied access to credit or delayed in business growth, your lower asset base or business equity compared to peers supports your narrative. Be sure to reference this connection briefly at the end of your personal narrative. So an example closing line could be, these experiences have contributed to my current financial position, which is reflected in my personal net worth statement attached to this application. Now, take a moment to reflect on what you've written. This process isn't just about compliance. It's about clearly documenting the barriers you've faced and how you've continued to move forward despite them. Okay, so now you're through the hardest and most important parts of your personal narrative. Identifying your experiences, organizing them into clear narratives, and then connecting them to economic harm. These are the key elements that are going to be evaluated under the new IFR standards. In our final section, I'm going to share a checklist and sample narratives so you can see how these pieces all come together into a polished submission. Remember, clarity, evidence, and professionalism are your best tools. So we've spent the last hour or so identifying key incidents of bias or disadvantage, organizing them using the who, what, when, where, why, and how framework, and connecting them to clear examples of economic harm. So now let's bring it all together into your final narrative draft. Your final narrative should include 2 distinct incidents. One or both can come from your education, employment, or business experience. Each should be about 1 paragraph written in plain, factual language. Think of it as telling the story of what happened, how it affected you, and how that connects to your economic position today. Each incident should follow this order. When did it happen? Where did it happen? Who was involved? What happened? Why do you believe bias or discrimination was a factor? And how did this experience cause measurable economic harm? So let's look at a couple of examples together. In 2015, while working as a project manager at a regional construction firm in North Dakota, I applied for a senior project manager position. Despite exceeding the listed qualifications and having led multiple high-value projects, I was not selected. The role was given to a less experienced individual who was part of the same social network as upper management. I later learned through internal colleagues that I was not considered a, quote, fit for the leadership culture, end quote. As a result, I remained in a lower paying position for 3 additional years, losing an estimated $25,000 annually in wages and benefits. Incident number 2 has to do with business financing. In 2020, after launching my own construction company, I applied for a $100,000 line of credit with my local bank. The lender required additional collateral, including personal property, that was not required of 2 peers with similar revenue and credit profiles. My application was denied, limiting my ability to purchase new equipment needed for state project bids. This directly resulted in lost contracts worth approximately $200,000 in potential revenue that year. Notice how each of these paragraphs clearly answers the 6 questions: when, where, who, what, why, and how. And they end with tangible examples of economic harm. They're factual, concise, and they avoid emotional language while still showing the human reality of disadvantage. So as you prepare your own narrative, keep these key points in mind. Keep it factual, not emotional. Focus on evidence and impact. Avoid general statements like, "I was always treated unfairly." Instead, describe a specific event. End each incident with a clear statement of how it affected your progress or financial position. Attach your personal net worth statement and any supporting documents, letters, denials, contracts, etc. Those are optional, but they do strengthen your narrative. So before we wrap this up, I hope you feel confident in drafting your personal narrative. If you're still feeling uncertain though, don't worry. The process does take time, and you can use these worksheets we've provided to refine your example after watching today's video. The IFR has raised important questions and sparked critical discussions among stakeholders. As North Dakota DBEs, you can stay informed with the latest updates and guidance by utilizing the resources provided by NDDOT to share essential information. So this is our plug for one of the main communication sources from NDDOT, and that's the DBE newsletter. Each time it's published, you should receive an email letting you know that it's available. Right now, it doesn't include any bid opening information because the DBE program is on pause and they're not setting any goals. But anything IFR related and any updates on the program are going to be included in the newsletter. They're also still having the DBE industry update meetings. Those are on the Mondays before a regularly scheduled bid opening. They're still going to keep that schedule even though they don't have anything bid opening related, since that's just how they've always had it set up and they want to keep everyone kind of on that same program. The information to join those team meetings are always published in the DBE newsletter, and they're also on the events page on the NDDOT website. Those have always been really good information, so it's important that you can attend those. However, if you missed previous meetings, the PowerPoint slides are published on the NDDOT website. They don't record those meetings, but you can still view the PowerPoint slides. And then lastly, NDDOT's main communication is through your certification record. So when you get a Q&A with the letter attached letting you know kind of what these new requirements are of the IFR, it's going to be in that Q&A section. And remember, you can send Q&As to NDDOT just like they send them to you through your certification record. And then remember, you can always contact the NDDOT Civil Rights Team via email or phone. Their contact information is here listed on this slide. So as we get ready to close, as a reminder, if you are found to be ineligible, there will be a waiting period to reapply. So it's important to really give your personal narrative your full attention. Clear incidents, strong evidence, and well-structured explanation of economic harm. There is no deadline for submitting your personal narrative, but the sooner NDDOT gets them back and reevaluated, the sooner they can really start the goal setting process and get those goals set on projects again. The reevaluation process does require that you submit your personal narrative along with an updated personal net worth statement. And again, you can download that directly from the Q&A that was sent to you through the certification and compliance system. If you do not wish to proceed with the personal narrative and personal net worth statement after participating in this workshop and watching the video, you can submit a withdrawal request to NDDOT, and they will note that. The instructions for that was also listed in that letter that you received through CCS. We know that you may need additional support and assistance in completing your personal narrative. There have been services popping up all over the internet since this IFR went into place that charge for personal narrative assistance or training. But thanks to the supportive services funding from NDDOT, our services are provided at no cost to you. So please reach out to the supportive services team at Project Solutions and schedule a one-on-one session with one of our consultants to provide guidance and tools as you write your own personal narrative. Our contact information is on the handouts and on this slide, which again, you can access here looking at that. A big thank you to the North Dakota Department of Transportation for making this session possible. Thank you all for watching. I hope this workshop was helpful as you begin the process of writing your personal narratives. Have a great day, and thanks again for participating.